So about a year ago, I put out a video saying that I was looking for an artist because I spent about a year writing a pilot script for a potential animated series, or at least a pilot. And I think it's about time I give a little update on that. I did put out that video in early 2020, and then the rest of 2020 happened, so there's been a lot of delays. I've been working a lot. My artist that I hired also was very distracted by that as well. So, yeah, this is kind of overdue, but here we are. I got some really cool art that I'm going to show off, and I think it's about time that I reveal a little bit more about what my idea is. So I'm going to talk more in detail about what the plot is and who the characters are and what they're like. And I guess in a way you can consider this maybe a pitch for this pilot because I will need help producing this at some point. But for now, we're just going to talk about things. Now, I should put up a disclaimer saying that technically this is still in the development phase. We haven't reached any level of production yet. Who knows if and when that'll happen. So, just so you know, I will be saying what I have now. And if we do end up producing this at some point, things could potentially change. I'm open to, collaboration and new ideas, especially if I, get the attention of anybody important with any experience putting out an animated pilot or an animated series. So I'm just going to show what I have right now, but keep in mind if this does reach any development stage, things could potentially change. So as I mentioned in the previous video, the working title I have for this is Playthings. The premise is about living toys that live in a toy shop, but it's not really just a toy shop. It's like a comic shop or a place that sells retro toys, collectibles, and all kinds of things like that. I think it's the type of place a lot of people are familiar with or at least have gone to at one point. So they all try to coexist together and occasionally go on adventures and stuff. And they're brought to life by the person that runs the shop. Now, for one, I don't really like the term brought to life for this for some reason. I like to use the term woken up because I think it sounds a little bit more whimsical. And it's not just any toy that can be brought to life, or woken up rather. It has to have had some kind of meaning to the person that owned it previously. Like, it had to have gotten them through a hard time or inspired them to do something great. Basically, it had to have changed their life and made them the person that they grew up to be. And I should also mention that they have no memory of their previous owner. They only have memories of the series that they're from. The memory of the owner has to kind of come to them one day through some sort of significant thing that they either see or saw that reminds them of their previous owner, and then that's when a lot of the memories will come flooding back. And I think also, keeping that limited also opens up a lot of possibilities for interesting ideas. And on a side note too, they're not just toys, because they'll also have all of the powers and abilities that they would normally have in whatever series they came from. So if they can fly, they can fly. If they have super strength, they have super strength. They can also use any items or weapons or accessories that go with the series that they're from. Only them, though, not anyone from any other series. So basically, they are who they are, just kind of scaled down. And I think that's a really cool thing to have because it opens up a lot of possibilities for different things, such as, if a villain gets woken up, how is going to try and take over the world? So that's when we have to get creative. As many of you know, I also collect toys, and I like to go out on toy hunting trips to flea markets and thrift stores and stuff. And I kind of got the inspiration from this one day because I would find a figure or something, and I would wonder, where did you come from? Who had you last? And more importantly, why did they give you up? See, this Mr. T action figure here, this isn't mine. I got this guy in a big lot of action figures that I purchased many years ago. So, for all I know, even the person that sold this, it wasn't even theirs. So, who knows where he's been? So, I get to wondering, if this guy could talk, what would he have to say? Alright, so let's meet the characters. So first of all, big thanks to Ben Malou Lone. I believe I said that the correct way you told me to say that. He was one of the first artists that contacted me when I put out the call for an artist, and he does some really good work, and we both worked very hard bringing these characters to life, him in particular, because, you know, he did all the drawing, but I kept sending him ideas, and he was suggesting a lot of his own ideas, which I thought were pretty cool, and he even asked me a lot of questions of stuff I didn't even consider. So in some ways, we didn't just illustrate these characters, we also helped develop them a little bit. I'll put links to his stuff in the description box of this video, so if anybody wants to check out his stuff or maybe even get a commission from him, you'll be able to contact him and see what he can do. And as you're about to see, he does some really good work. So the first character is the person that runs the shop, and her name is Cathy, or Cat for short. And fun fact, her original name was going to be Annie, but I thought maybe that sounded a little too close to Andy, you know, from Toy Story. I love the Toy Story movies, and obviously they were a big influence on this idea, among many other things. But I'm trying to distance myself from it as much as possible, as well as, you know, a lot of other similar ideas as well. For one, I don't want to be accused of stealing anything. And second, I'm trying not to make this too derivative. In some cases, it's going to be unavoidable, but I really want this to be its own thing. So I decided to start by changing her name. The reason why she was named Annie in the first place was because I had this idea where I would name the human characters, and there are a couple of human characters I have ideas for, you know, future installments of this. But there's going to be a lot of human characters, and I thought maybe it would be kind of cool where, you know, a lot of the toys, they're, you know, fictitious stuff, but what if I named the human characters after famous toys? So I named her Annie after Raggedy Ann, but again, I decided to change it. If I ever introduce her mother, I think I'll name her mother Annie, but I decided to change it to Cathy after the famous doll Chatty Cathy, so it kind of works out in the end, and in a way I kind of like it a little bit better, because I like when characters have a very, you know, abbreviated name, so we could just call her Cat instead. But I would describe Cathy as being very smart, very bright, and has kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, but she's also kind of a workaholic, so she spends a lot of time, you know, working on the shop, making sure things are stocked and in order, and in a way that also kind of makes her a little bit socially awkward. So one thing I like is that this show is going to have, you know, a human that is friends with the toys, which is something you don't really see that often. So in some ways they'll get involved with her life. Like, for example, they'll see her working a lot, so they'll tell her to maybe stop and take a break. Or maybe they'll see that she's being kind of shy about a boy she likes, so they try to boost her confidence, you know, stuff like that. Okay, so now let's meet the toys. And this was the fun part, because I basically had to make bootlegs. You know, bootleg is not the right term for this. Yes, these were inspired by a lot of other things, and I do want them to resonate with familiarity of a lot of more famous stuff, but I did my best to make these their own thing as much as I possibly can. Like, I want people to believe that this was a real toy line at one point, and not just something someone made up, even though someone made it up. Also, at some point we will have to voice these characters too, so what I'm going to do is, while I describe them, I'm also going to juxtapose them to a famous voice actor. Not that, you know, I'm expecting this person to lend their voice to my project or anything, but it'll be a good reference point to what I think the characters should sound like, or at least how I hear them when they're speaking in my head. So first up we have Ted from the series Tough Ted. And you can just envision the commercial for this toy line as well. You can hear them go, "Tough Ted action figures, each sold separately," and stuff like that. So the genesis of this character is actually a very interesting story. I think I tweeted about this many, many years ago, but one night me and some friends were playing a game called Super Fight, which is kind of like Cards Against Humanity, except the way it works is that you draw a character and then you give them some kind of ability or some kind of handicap, and then everyone else does the same, and you have to convince the person who drew the character that their character can beat their character, or something like that. It's a little bit more complicated than I'm making it sound. It's a fun game, though. So a hand that I drew at one point was, it was like a bear who became a warrior who had to fight another bear who became a lich or something like that. It was a really cool idea, and I was like, wow, that would make for a really cool series. So I kind of held on to that idea for a while, and eventually it manifested into this character. I also based a lot of him off of Usagi Yojimbo and a little bit of Samurai Jack as well. For Ted, I kind of wanted to build the ultimate good guy because he's the main focus of the pilot. He's the new toy in the shop, and he's come to life, and he meets the others, and he's kind of having a bit of a crisis of, an identity crisis, because now he's realizing that he's just a toy, and he has to kind of deal with that. I think that also resonates with the Samurai Jack comparison as well, but I also made him blue, because blue is like the color of the good guy. Like every major superhero has predominantly blue for their color scheme. And I made him a bear because, well, bears are kind of synonymous with courage. There's like the teddy bear, which is famous, and then there's stuff like Care Bears and gummy bears and stuff like that. So I threw all that together and I got Ted. As the name suggests, Ted is very tough and he's very skilled. He's a skilled fighter, obviously, but he's also very honorable and respectful. In the pilot, he's gonna maybe freak out a little bit and maybe lash out at the others until he kind of calms down, and then he'll come back later and be like, I'm very sorry, please forgive me. I should also point out that right now, of all the toys, he is the shortest, and I'm actually going to be describing these in size order from smallest to largest for no other reason other than that's just how my thought process works for these characters. And I kind of like the idea of the smallest one being the bravest. As far as voices go, for some reason, I keep hearing him speak in a similar voice to Yuri Lowenthal, who played teenage Ben 10 from Alien Force and Ultimate Alien and a couple other things as well. He's done a lot of other stuff as well, but I kind of like that sort of youthful yet authoritative voice for him, and I think that fits him very well. Next up, we have Gabby from the series Wonder Witches. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm trying to distance myself from Toy Story, and there is a character named Gabby in Toy Story 4. However, I kind of came up with this character long before we knew anything about Toy Story 4, and within the story there is actually a reason for her having that name. I might be willing to change it if we can come up with something better, but for now we're just going to stick to it. I just call her Gabrielle, and then Gabby again. I really like abbreviated character names, so her full name is going to be Gabrielle, but everyone's just going to call her Gabby. So Gabby is from an anime, but not really just any anime. She's from an early 90s English localized Americanized anime. So think stuff like the early dub of Dragon Ball or Sailor Moon or something like that. But her show, as it was shown in America, is very different from its original Japanese version. So a lot of things were changed. Most of the story is still there, but things like names and plot points were altered. So in reality, her show would be more equivalent to something like Voltron or Robotech or I guess Samurai Pizza Cats, where again the story is there, but a lot has changed for an English localization. Her show is very similar to Sailor Moon or just like a Magical Girl anime. Gabby is not the main character though. She is kind of the helper character, the sidekick. So think something like Luna from Sailor Moon, but with a human form. Did Luna have a human form? I don't know. I didn't watch a whole lot of Sailor Moon. So she's very pleasant. She's very helpful. She's very polite. She likes to assist new toys in the shop and kind of ease them into their new situation and stuff like that. And, well, I don't really want to reveal too much else about this character because if this does go past the pilot stage, I kind of have plans for her. I'm, again, not going to reveal anything, but I do have big plans for this character. Maybe you can get a little bit of a clue based on, who she is and what she's from. But, yeah, I'm going to keep this a secret for now. As far as voice actors go, I'm not entirely sure. I'm thinking something along the lines of maybe like Christina V, who has done many voices. She voiced Shantae in the Shantae video game series. Or maybe like Ashley Johnson, who is the voice of teenage Gwen Tennyson from the Ben 10 series. She's also Tulip from Infinity Train. I believe she was also Ellie from the game The Last of Us. Something along those lines. I like to maybe get someone who has a very distinct anime voice actor sound. Anime voice actors tend to seem very different from, typical American voice actors. They usually have like a certain sound to their voice. And because she's from an anime, I think that would fit her very well. Next up, we have Jackson Action, or just Jack for short. He's based on, obviously, G.I. Joe, or like Action Man, or, a lot of other military-type toys you would see from like the 80s and 90s. As much as I said I didn't want to be too derivative of a lot of things, it's very hard to do a parody of G.I. Joe, because there's been so much of it throughout the years. But you kind of have to have a character like this in a show about talking toys. So it was kind of unavoidable. Jack is a military guy through and through. He gets along great with the others, but he's also very by the books and very proper and believes in order. And whenever there's a situation that's happening, he likes to take charge and help lead the others. Even though I don't really consider anyone in particular to be a leader in this group, he just has that type of personality. One thing he likes to do is he likes to help Cat with the toy shop, so he'll get a lot of the vehicles and stuff in working order, he'll clean them up and get them ready to be sold. As far as voice actors go, I'm not entirely sure. I would like someone maybe associated with G.I. Joe, like maybe Michael Bell in his earlier years, or someone like Jason Marsden, who I think was the voice of Duke in G.I. Joe Renegades. Someone of that caliber, someone that can really play a military officer who's serious, but also not so serious some of the times. Next up, we have Maximus Chomp, or Max for short. Max is from a series called Scale Force, which is basically Ninja Turtles, Extreme Dinosaurs, Street Sharks, Biker Mice from Mars, Cowboys of Moo Mesa, all those types of shows in the genre that I coined a long time ago that nobody ever uses as the anthropomorphic crime fighters. Max is the fun part of the 90s incarnate. He's extreme, he's got big muscles, he uses words like radical and tubular, he likes to watch pro wrestling, and in his series he drives a monster truck. Max is very strong, he's very boisterous, he'll stick up for a smaller person if they're in need. But he's also not very bright. I kind of envision him as the lovable idiot of the group. And you know what, I'm trying not to be biased with my own characters, but Max might be my favorite creation. Because he's so much fun to write lines and situations for. There's so many things we can do with him, so many fun and funny things that we can do with him. As far as voice actors go, hands down, the person that I hear every time he speaks, Kevin Michael Richardson. Kevin Michael Richardson does a lot of like loud, strong sounding characters, and every time I hear Max in my head, I hear that voice, and I would just want to hear Kevin Michael Richardson say something like, "Tubular dude," or something like that. I can't do his voice, but, imagine his voice coming out of that character, and it just works. Next up, we have Lady Glimmermoth, who's not really from anything in particular. She's actually kind of a nightlight / music box, and her purpose is to help kids get to sleep and not be afraid of the dark. I got the idea for her from a kind of obscure toy line from the 80s called Glow Friends, which were these adorable little bug characters that glow in the dark. And I added in a little bit of Sky Dancers to give her a more humanoid form. I also wanted her antenna to resemble another toy line, another kind of obscure one called Sectars, which were these half human, half insect warrior characters. And I was very adamant about that little detail. Now you're probably wondering why I made her a moth and not something a little more logical like a firefly or something like that. Well, it's because moths are adorable and there's not enough moth characters in pop culture. Also, she's a toy from the 80s, so it didn't have to make total sense. As far as voice actors go, I kind of like Kari Wahlgren. Lady is very cheerful and giggly and very whimsical. She looks like a moth, but she's basically a fairy. And she also has kind of an insecty type of voice, kind of like this. I can't do it very well, but you get the idea. And I've heard Kari play very similar sounding characters, and I think she would be the closest thing I would associate with Lady. Lady doesn't really like to fight. She doesn't like violence. It kind of upsets her because of her nature. She's usually got a smile on her face, she's usually very happy, and she wants to make other people happy and make them feel welcome. If I was to describe her with a single phrase, she is the light where there is darkness. And finally, we have Savage Stone, from a series very similar to Masters of the Universe. Stone is what's known in the action figure world as an army builder figure. Think stormtroopers from Star Wars, foot soldiers from Ninja Turtles, or Cobra Vipers from G.I. Joe. They are just the nameless, faceless goons that if you were lucky enough as a kid, you had a whole bunch of them to set up an army for the good guys to take on. They get no personality, they get no development, there's nothing special about them at all. They are merely an obstacle for the main characters to get past. But Stone is very different. He's also a very non-violent character. He prefers not to fight, but he will if he has to, and he is very strong, but he's more of an intellectual. He's usually good for words of wisdom or coming up with ideas or ways to get out of a situation. He prefers to use his head over his fists. I would compare him to characters like Beast from X-Men or Android 16 from Dragon Ball Z. As far as voice actors go, again, I'm not entirely sure about him. It's got to be somebody who can sound gentle yet strong at the same time. You know, I hear him sounding like this, you know, something along those lines. I'm thinking maybe someone like Fred Tatasciore, or however you say his last name. He's voiced the Hulk before, and yeah, that's also kind of a character like that. He's very strong, but, you know, the Hulk has an intellect as well. Now, the reason why he is the way he is and not like what his TV show or toy line counterpart should be is because of his previous owner. His previous owner didn't really see him as that. I'm not going to go into detail right now because it's not really that important, but one thing that I want to add to this show is that the previous owner of the toy will also have some influence over the toy. Like, maybe they'll pick up a quirky character trait that they wouldn't normally have, or in some cases a complete personality change, such as, you know, Stone, who was supposed to be a bad guy, just a nameless, faceless goon, but made him into a good guy. So we could come up with some really interesting situations, like a bad guy becoming a good guy, or perhaps a good guy becoming a bad guy. So those are essentially the 6 main characters I have. Ideally, the way I'd like this show to work is that you'd have the 6 main characters, and then you'd have maybe 1 or 2 other characters that'll either be the focus of an episode or involved in the plot somehow, or just tag along on an adventure or something like that. Similar to how Batman, the Brave and the Bold work, where, you know, you had Batman as the main character, and he'd be joined by maybe 1 or 2 other heroes for the episode. And let me tell you, I have no shortage of other characters I can throw into this. I have many written down. Most of them are still kind of up here. I really should get those on paper at some point. Some of them I know exactly what I want to do with. Others either need a little bit of development, or I just don't know exactly how to integrate them into the story just yet. But that's a future problem. Let's get past the pilot phase first and not get ahead of ourselves. I did, however, put a couple other characters in the pilot. Some are going to be seen briefly, and a couple others have a little bit more screen time. This is mostly just for world development, and while the previous characters we met are all action figures, these enter the realm of like plush toys and dolls and other, you know, larger type of toys. So there's Reading Raccoon, who's kind of like Teddy Ruxpin. He's a plush toy that would like to read stories to children. He is in charge of the store's catalogs and reference materials and things like that, all the books that they use. Then there's ED-2000, or Eddie. The ED stands for Edutainment Droid. He's kind of like Alfie or 2XL, which were robots that were kind of educational toys for children. He is hooked up to an old computer in the back room, and they use him to look up like old toy commercials or clips from shows, and in some cases he'll look up previous owners to see what they're doing with their lives right now. Then there's 2 other characters that I wrote in to kind of give a little bit of perspective on this situation, because if you woke up one day and found out that your whole life was a lie and you know, you were just a toy, a plaything, if you were, it would kind of affect you very differently. So I have these 2 other characters. There's Eleanor, who is a doll from a failed toy line. The toy line that didn't sell very well, didn't go over with kids very well. The kind that it's easier to find ones that are in the box than out of the box, you know? She is very upset about that, and she really doesn't grasp the situation that they're in very well, and she just thinks that everyone in the shop is trash and doesn't see the point of it all. But the thing is, you know, she was woken up, which means that somebody out there loved her. She just doesn't know who or why. And finally, there's Bright-Eyed Beatrice, or B for short. B was supposed to be like a big toy release at one point, you know, for the Christmas season, the one everybody wanted. And her selling point was that she had beautiful eyes. Unfortunately, her production was rushed and the dolls were defective, causing the eyes to fall out and creating a choking hazard for children, so her line was recalled. So B has no eyes. She's basically blind. But she's also very optimistic and very cheerful, and I kind of described her as someone with a disability who hasn't given up. Full disclosure though, while I did come up with this character on my own, I later found out that there is an animated short from 1935 called Broken Toys that has a doll with no eyes in it. I was actually kind of shocked to discover this. But because I like the idea so much, I decided to retroactively make my character a reference to that character. Just wanted to be transparent about this. And I kind of like how I wrote those characters. One's very pessimistic, the other one is very optimistic despite, you know, their situation. And, you know, it's something that we can work off of a lot. So that's it. That's the characters, and that's the plot. Hopefully this video didn't go on for too long, because I feel like I've been talking forever. So, where do we go from here? Well, I don't really know. I'm trying to do as much for this as I possibly can. I wrote the script. I came up with the characters. I, commissioned someone to draw them for me. I'm also trying to do the storyboards for the script. It's been very difficult for me to do that because I kind of got into it for a while, but then I was held up by a lot of other things. You know, I do have a full-time job, which is also one of the reasons why this channel has faltered a bit in terms of content. So I've been doing as much as I can with that. I ideally would like to maybe hook up with, a studio, or maybe an independent studio or independent creators that, some people with experience to help me out with this. Again, I'm open to suggestions about what to do with all this stuff. I do have some contacts as well that I could reach out to, so I might look into that sometime in the future. Now, how am I paying for this? Animation is very expensive. Well, as I mentioned in the original video, I'm trying to pay for this myself. So, as I mentioned before, I do have a full-time job, which is basically covering all of my, pretty much all my expenses. The way I am trying to pay for this is with money that I make through YouTube, or that I make through Patreon, and that I make selling things on eBay. I have an eBay store, for those of you who don't know. Link should be in the description. It's mostly stuff from the toy channel that I have. Stuff I'm trying to get rid of. I've recently been selling off a lot of other collectibles and stuff that's been cluttering around. That's not anything out of desperation, by the way. That's something that had to be done anyway, and all the money for that is going to go toward this. I've basically been stockpiling it in a special account just for this. So I have money. I don't know if it's enough money, but I do have money. I'm not going to give a number, but we'll see. Maybe I can get like a quote on how much this might possibly be. I've heard that every minute of animation costs about $1,000. I don't know if that's entirely true, but that might be a good indicator. Basically, I'm trying to avoid crowdfunding this because, well, over the years, I've seen too many crowdfund projects falter or become massive disappointments. Mighty number 9, anybody? I've also been involved in crowdfunding stuff that didn't really turn out that good. I'm not going to name names, but if you've been following me a while, you can probably guess which ones those are. But again, I'm not going to name names. So ideally, I would like to pay for this myself. Now, if you would like to help, basically just support me, support my channels, keep watching, preferably with ad block off. You can also donate to my Patreon. I do have Patreon stretch goals for things that I would like to review for Cartoon Clip Show. I've actually forgotten about those for a while because I've been so busy with other stuff. At one point I was doing Patreon requests, so I might open those up again sometime in the future. We'll see what 2022 looks like. This year I'm kind of busy, but we'll see when I can get around to doing those again. So in the meantime, $1 to my Patreon gets you everything. I got exclusive videos on there. You get Cartoon Clip Show a day early, ad-free. So I think that's a pretty good deal. And I also, ask questions on my Patreon of stuff like, what should I do? I do commentary videos on Patreon of old Cartoon Clip Show episodes. So I get to ask people, what one they would like me to do. So I hear those requests and I usually do them. But yeah, that's basically how you can support me. Go to Patreon. Go to my eBay store and see if there's anything you want to buy. I have lots of anime figures and various other things on there that I'm trying to get rid of. I still have stuff I got to list too. I'm trying to keep the fees low as well, so that's kind of rough. But yeah, that's basically where I'm at. Let me know what you think of the pilot. I haven't shown this to a whole lot of people. This is basically my big reveal of it. So if anyone has any input, anyone who has any experience, feel free to contact me and let me know. Now, I do have a contingency in case this doesn't really work out how I want, because we've put so much time and effort into this that it would be a shame to let this idea just kind of sit in the ether with nowhere to go. So I think the best fallback for this is maybe turn it into a comic. I think that would be the best and most cost-effective way to get this idea out there, and then maybe if it becomes popular, we can do something with it later. So Ben, if you're watching, if this doesn't pan out the way I want it to, we may be in contact again. So hopefully you're not too busy. But yeah, that's my idea. That's the pilot. I didn't give you everything about it, obviously. I only mentioned all the important bits. But there it is, all out in the open. So if anybody would like to help produce this with me, would be looking for people with experience, obviously. Maybe even hire a project manager as well. That'd be kind of nice because of my full-time job. I can't always be on top of things. Maybe I can have somebody make some decisions while I'm not around. But we'll see. I'm going to be very picky about who I choose as well because this is very important to me. But yeah, that's the idea. If anybody thinks they can help, or if anybody knows anyone that can help, either contact me or pass this along to them. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of all this. I haven't really showed this to a lot of people either, so it'll be interesting to see how people react to this. But yeah, that's the pilot. That's my pitch. Hopefully this goes somewhere, and I will see you guys later. Thanks for listening.